Everyone. Is there an echo? No? Okay. So my name is Ashley, and today I'm here to talk to you about real estate, a topic that I love, and I hope that at the end of this, you'll be excited about it too. So we're going to start with the fundamentals of real estate investing, and then what it takes to get started. We'll talk a little bit about my journey in real estate, which is actually fairly new. I'll give you some information about my personal experiences, and then we will talk about strategies for success. So I also want to say, if at any point you have a question, but you're afraid to interrupt me, please just ask the question or use the raise your hand function or however you want to get it out. I think sometimes people want you to hold your questions until the end, but there's this train of thought type of thing. Maybe you don't remember the context of the question if you wait to the end, so it might be better to just get it out while we're on that topic. A little bit about me. I am a Los Angeles native, which I hear is rare these days. I went to UC Santa Barbara, where I majored in Chinese and global studies. I became a teacher after that because I thought I wanted to save the world through education. And I soon learned that that was not the path for me after 3.5 years. So then I decided to go to law school. I did an emphasis in critical race theory, which was phenomenal. I am currently a full-time lawyer, so I'm corporate counsel for a company on the East Coast. I got started in real estate investing technically in 2021. But I did buy my first property in 2017, but we'll talk about that later. And we'll also talk a little bit about my journey to becoming a home inspector, which I kind of consider still in the real estate bucket. And then if you have questions about any of these things along the way, just let me know. But first, I want to ask a question, and I do expect people to answer. What are your greatest fears when it comes to getting started with real estate? So the reason I want to know this is because people approach me all the time telling me how real estate seems so cool. They're so interested. They heard this, they heard that. And these are people who seem to have the resources to get started investing, but for whatever reason, there's some sort of fear or something holding them back. And so I'm always interested to see what those fears are. So if you are brave, please let me know what your greatest fear is when it comes to getting started.
I can read off the chat. Someone said funding or seed money. And we also have the housing market collapsed as another fear.
Okay.
And I see someone has raised their hand as well.
Okay.
OC, is it you that raised your hand to answer? If not, okay. There's a lot more in the chat. Let's see. What if I buy the wrong house? Losing money, high interest during seller's market. Someone said regulations is a big one. Not having the funds to invest. So again, seed money, I guess. And whose money will I use?
Okay. So it sounds like a lot of it is, where will I get the money? What if I lose my money? It seems like that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, bad tenants, bad credit scores, another one. So.
Okay, so what if I can't get any money? What if I don't have enough money? What if I lose my money? What if tenants cause me to lose my money?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to know. We may or may not address some of these things, but I do think it's important to put the fear out there and put it on the spot, and maybe you might learn or hear something tonight that can help address some of that. So into the fundamentals, and I am well aware that we are limited on time. This is a very large topic, so I'll do my best. So why real estate? For me, I started investing in real estate because it seemed fun. I know that sounds a little crazy, but I started investing because I heard on a podcast, what it had done for a certain person, and the way that he described it sounded really fun. And then the word freedom stuck out to me. It seemed like when he started investing in real estate, he had more time to do in his life whatever he wanted to do, more money to do what he wanted to do, to be with his family, just freedom appealed to me, and then the potential for building wealth. And I don't mean generational wealth, which I do think is a byproduct of investing in real estate, but I mean wealth while we're still alive, because I think that's important as well. This same person that I heard on the podcast says, if you're not intentionally trying to get wealthy, you will likely end up accidentally poor. And I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in accidentally ending up poor. So, types of real estate investment. There's buy and holds. So you might have heard of this. This is basically where you acquire a property and you keep it and you do whatever you want. So that could be short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, long-term rentals. Essentially, it's just buying a property and holding onto it. You have buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat, or what people call the BRRRR method. So this is where you acquire a property. And when I say acquire, I'm leaving room for the many different types of ways you might get a property, which is not always buying it. You put some work in it to improve it or make it better. Then you rent it out. And then after you have some equity, you refinance it. You take your money out through that refinance. And then you repeat the process. That's a BRRRR. Fix and flip. So this is where you acquire a property, fix it up, and then you put it right back on the market for a profit, sometimes for a loss. Real estate investment trusts. These are REITs. This is essentially like almost like an ETF, like you own a pool of real estate assets. You own a piece and you get paid dividends on that pool of assets. Then there's syndication. I'm not super familiar. I know that Alvin did a presentation on syndication, which was super intriguing, but it seems like it involves investing in a much larger real estate project for a profit or a return, but it's very passive on the construction side and management side. And there's promissory notes or lending. So another way to invest in real estate is to actually be the bank. So that means you are taking your personal money and lending it to other investors to do their projects, or even not investors. It can be you're lending your money to contractors who need to do work. And then there's wholesaling. Wholesaling is when you go under contract for a property, but you don't really buy it. You actually sell it and you kind of close two doors at once. So you're like buying and selling the property all in one transaction for a small profit. So these are the ones that I have done, the ones with the check marks next to them. Fix and flip. I just acquired a property last week that I would use for my first fix and flip. So that's in the books. Syndication, not yet. And I'm also right now working on the wholesaling piece by acquiring properties on the low for tax deeds or like foreclosures or other very low properties that I can then resell to another investor so they can do what they want to do with it. Any questions at this point? No? Okay. So, market analysis. This is not about to be super technical because I think the very first thing you need to do before you determine, what market you should be looking in is to figure out why you even want to invest in real estate. Once you figure out what your purpose is and you understand it well, it'll help you figure out which market you need to be looking in. So for example, if you want cash flow, if your whole goal is, okay, I want to make $500 extra a month, then that pretty much goes down for you the types of markets you should be looking in. For cash flow, you might want to look in, I don't know, Cleveland, but maybe it's not so great in another market like Charlotte, North Carolina. It just depends on what you're interested in and what your budget is. But when you know your purpose, certain things just aren't options anymore. So it makes it a lot easier. What's difficult is when you say, I want to invest in real estate, but you don't really know why, or your only reason is money. And so then it seems like you have too many options and you're not sure what is available to you and where to start. So my very first piece of advice is to know why. Do you want cash flow? Do you want to build up a pool of assets to pass down to your children? Do you want to build up a bunch of cash by fixing and flipping so that you can buy your first home? Do you want to retire your parent? Once you understand why you want to invest in real estate, it'll become a lot easier. Next, when it comes to market analysis, is leveraging your power team. So as far as I know, with engineers, you guys are really great with working on a team. And real estate is definitely a team sport. So you don't have to know everything yourself. Like when you're investing in real estate, you're relying heavily on a realtor, you're relying on a lender, you're relying on contractors, all kinds of people to give you information about the different markets, especially if you're investing out of state. Then you're going to rely on your numbers. So market analysis is only as good as your numbers. I mean, if the Texas market is good, but you don't have Texas market money, then that market's not available to you. So where your money is will also determine what market you're looking at. Getting started.
Just want to ask a question from the chat, and you might have touched this on a little bit, but someone asked, do you want to do this as in the idea of real estate investing as an individual or an organized business structure? And are there ever instances where business structure will eat into your profits and it's not economically viable anymore?
That's a good question. So whether to invest in your personal name or in an entity depends on several things. The first thing I would say is on your risk tolerance. And my experience from all the engineers I know, you all tend to be quite risk averse. When we talk about the different things that can happen when you're investing in your personal name, people tend to seem turned off by that. So sometimes people invest in an entity to mitigate some of that risk. But pretty much almost everything that you want to do, except use like a hard money lender or maybe like a syndication, you can do in your personal name. So if you want to do fix and flips, you can just do that in your personal name, especially if you have private financing or if you're partnering with someone who has their own LLC. Would I do that in my personal name? Never, but I'm also an attorney, so I understand what the risks are and I'm not interested in those risks. So some of that is understanding what are all the things that could go wrong in my personal name. Can my entity help mitigate some of those things? And if so, then you might decide you want to do that and take on the extra costs associated with creating an entity for investment purposes. I hope that answers the question. Were there other questions?
That was the only one for now.
Okay, cool. So purpose over purses. One of the big mistakes I see, and I talked a little bit about this earlier with new investors, is they don't actually know why they want to invest in real estate. They say they want to make more money or they say they want generational wealth, but to me, those aren't real reasons. Like, I mean, we all want more money. Yes, like there's a lot of different ways you can make more money. So why real estate of all the ways? And I think that is where things get murky for people. So I cannot emphasize enough that you really have to understand why you want to do this, and it has to be a strong why, because things get rough. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've had some interesting experiences investing in real estate. I've cried a lot. It gets rough, and so if your why is not strong enough, you'll give up, or it'll just crush you. So it's better to just come in and be clear about why you want to do this. And when things get difficult, that will be the thing that drives you forward. And money is never strong enough to do that for you. So also getting your mind right. So having a deep understanding of what it means to be an investor, which means wins, but it also means losses. Like everything isn't always going to go your way. Is that something that you're comfortable with? Like, are you comfortable with the idea that you might put $20,000 into a flip and make no profit? I have a friend who has done multiple flips and there's been a loss on several of them. And that sucks and that hurts and it makes it very difficult to do the next deal. So that's just a reality we have to face as investors, and you have to ask yourself, like, am I comfortable with that reality? Another thing is appreciate the risks and then learn to mitigate them. So you're not going to be able to eliminate the risk when it comes to investing in real estate. The idea of being a landlord, so yes, a tenant can ruin your property, or you might have squatters or whatever it is. Like, you can't prevent those things from happening ever, but you can put things in place to make it less likely that those things will happen, or to protect yourself if those things do happen. So don't allow the risk to basically paralyze you and say, no, I don't want to invest in real estate because there's risk involved. And of course, you're gonna have to get your money right. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Like, it takes money to invest in real estate. And I know I see people on social media talking about, they got a house for $1,000, and that is a thing. So that happens. But it's not the norm. So there's some financial planning involved. There might need to be some habits that you have that need to change in your personal life, because unless you have some sort of inheritance, or you've got a big lump sum of money, like, you're going to be putting your own personal money aside to get started investing in real estate. And then your credit, if you're going to be relying on lenders, they're going to be looking at your credit, even if you created an LLC to invest in. Like, they will still run your credit report. So all these things need to be in tip-top shape before you decide to start investing. So really what I'm saying is, if you have a 500 credit score, it's probably not the time to start investing in real estate. Probably want to get that taken care of before you get started.
We have quite a few questions in the chat. Kind of going back to the idea of the business entity, we've asked, would the entity be a holding company or an LLC purposed for property investments?
I've seen people on Instagram talk about creating a holding company owned by your trust, and then putting all your LLCs under this holding company, and blah, 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 blah. Like, my advice is, if you don't understand why you're doing that, don't do it. So whoever is telling you to create a holding company as opposed to a regular LLC for investing in real estate, make them explain to you why you need to do that. Then you decide if that actually makes sense to you and if it fits with your circumstance. And if it doesn't, you're fine with just a regular LLC for investing in real estate.
Right. Another question was, if you don't mind sharing, what was your why?
So my initial why was actually my mom. I have a goal to help support her in her retirement, because she's unable to do that herself for circumstances that are beyond her control. And so my why was, okay, I want to make a certain amount of money from real estate per month, so that when she's ready, she can just live her life, and then all these properties can basically support her lifestyle without me having to feel a lot of pressure financially to take that on myself. And then as I get closer to that goal, I understand that my why will have to change when I reach that goal for me to continue. So I think my new why will be supporting my own family with real estate. So I don't know that I want to work in a corporate position forever. And I would love, the idea of being able to spend time with my kids and my husband how I want to, go on trips, and the things we see on movies that just look so unattainable, especially living in LA. Like, I'd love to be able to do those things. And I think that investing in real estate can fund that type of lifestyle for me and my family.
Then one of our other questions, what about investing in real estate for healthcare? This person said they wanted to for the purposes of creating HUD houses.
So you can definitely, once you get your real estate, I mean, for the most part, you could do whatever you want to do with it. So I know that there are a lot of HUD programs. There's actually I think it's called the Neighbor Next Door program, where HUD allows teachers, law enforcement personnel, firefighters, and I don't remember who else, but you can buy a HUD home for 50% off in most places. But the public, like, you can also just go on HUD.gov, I think it is, and you can buy a HUD home if you wanted to. And if you decide later to turn it into whatever business you want to turn it into, as long as you're complying with the local laws and ordinances around that type of business, that's up to you. You can do whatever you want with it.
Good to know. I think this is a short one. Would running the credit report be a hard or soft pull by lenders?
It's a hard pull.
And then, is it viable getting a RE license, a real estate license, to cut the overhead cost?
So typically real estate agents are paid by the seller. So if you're buying real estate, you wouldn't be paying a real estate agent to buy your property, so there wouldn't be overhead costs there. But I mean, I know real estate agents who also invest. I think the advantage, I guess, that I see from being a real estate agent is that they have access to the MLS.
Mhm.
Um, but other than that, I don't really see a real advantage in being a real estate agent. I do see an advantage depending on what you want to do and being involved in other ways, like, maybe being an appraiser or maybe a contractor. But I'm not really, I don't really see a ton of benefits with being a real estate agent. Maybe a developer. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess it wouldn't hurt, but I'm not really sure that it would cut your overhead costs by much. I mean, I think the top fee that I've seen for selling a house is like 6%, and that's paid by the seller's agent. So,
And someone asked, does everything on MLS make it to the open market?
no. So there's properties that are in the MLS that you never see on Zillow or Realtor.com or some other sites. And I learned that from actually my Chicago real estate agent. Um, I was looking on Zillow, but she was sending me lists from the MLS, and I would look those properties up on Zillow, and it was not listed for sale. And then that's when she was like, "Well, we get access to things that are on our side, but you don't necessarily see those." So,
Sure. We have more questions rolling in. Let's see. What about if you have a forgivable loan with the city? How does that impact someone who wants to invest in real estate?
so if the forgivable loan has a lien on your property, that could affect what you can do with the property. But if the loan that you have is like in your personal name, I mean, it might be something that shows up on your credit report, um, that a lender might consider in determining your debt to income ratio. That's the only way I can think of it affecting you.
I'm gonna ask, do you know anything about arrived.com and how to invest in real estate through it?
I've actually never heard of that.
I have not either. Maybe if you could elaborate in the chat, we can circle back to that, what arrived is. I have another question about LA specifically. Los Angeles is super expensive, and I've heard of people investing out of state. Have you done that as well? If so, how difficult was the process? I know you kind of just touched on this when you just talked about Chicago.
Yeah, later when I talk about my journey, I'll share with you some of the properties that I've invested in out of state, and I'll share a little bit more about my timeline and when I bought what, in what states.
Nice. And our last one, any advice on REITs as a means of investing in real estate?
Yeah, so I'm probably not the best person to ask about this. I tried it. I invested in REITs in 2020, and honestly, it just wasn't moving fast enough for me. I don't know if I just invested in the wrong ones or maybe I didn't put enough money into it. I don't know. But, or maybe I was just impatient. I don't know. But it wasn't doing for me what I wanted it to do. It wasn't growing my money as fast as I wanted it to grow, for my purpose. You know what I mean? Like, if my purpose is to retire a parent, I don't have time to sit around and wait for a REIT to increase in value incrementally. Like, I need big things to happen. So I had to do something a bit more aggressive, and it just didn't work for me. But I didn't see anything wrong with it. I didn't think it was a strategy that I could rely on now to help me reach my initial purpose.
Awesome. Thanks for all the questions, y'all. This is a good conversation.
Okay, I'll continue. So you will need to get intimate with your finances, and we've definitely touched on some of this even just in questions. So one question that you should be able to answer without really thinking about it, and this is something that you can work on, is how much does it cost to be you every month? So I can tell you right now how much it costs me every single month to just live my basic life. I mean, like, pay for my living expenses, gas, groceries, um, all my subscriptions, Netflix, internet. Like, I can tell you the amount that it costs me every month to live without doing anything extra. So I'm not including going to brunch with the girls on weekends. I'm not talking about going shopping, the spa, eating out, none of that. Like, just basic. That's a question that you should be able to answer. And the only way you'll be able to answer that is if you're really intimate with your financial situation. Another question you should be able to answer is how much discretionary income do you have each month to allocate towards real estate investing? So once you know how much it costs to be you every month, you'll know what's left over. And then you can say, okay, what portion of this am I comfortable investing towards real estate every month? What portion do I want to do something else with? Maybe you have nothing that you're comfortable investing towards real estate with, and that's a conversation for you to have with yourself. You know, if I really want to do this, what change do I need to make? Do I need to get a higher paying job? Do I need to take on a side hustle? Do I need to create new goals? And that's a personal conversation. And then what is your credit score? So that's I think that's just something that you should know. And there's lots of tools out there that can help you find that information for free.
There's a
So
few questions again. Someone asked, this might be a harder question. What is the minimum investment amount for real estate?
there's no minimum.
Yeah. And then what investment platform is best and reliable?
So that will depend on what you're trying to do and what your purpose is.
And then someone asked, how do you become intimate with your finances?
That's a great question. I would start with writing down every single necessary expense that you have on a monthly basis. And when I say necessary, I mean it's something that you're not going to eliminate. Not something you can't live without, but something that you refuse to eliminate. So, you know, my roommate may say, I refuse to eliminate Netflix. I may say, I'm willing to get rid of that because I want to invest in real estate. So write down what those necessary expenses are. And I'm sure you know how much you make every month. I would subtract that. And I think that is a good first place to start with getting intimate with your finances.
I agree. Every time I have a whole budget Excel sheet of every line thing I spend money on. And then the last one I have for now is, if you got your first home with a 3% interest rate, would you sell or just keep it and get more houses from there?
I think it depends on what your purpose is, right? So if you are me and your purpose is to get monthly income to support another person, I wouldn't see a benefit in selling that property if I can get really good rental income from it, that I can use for my purpose. Or if I can sell it and make, let's just say something crazy, $500,000. That's a different situation. You know, I might be able to take that 500,000, put it in a high yield savings, or at least put some of it in a high yield savings, and then use that to support that person. So it really just depends on what you want to do and why you want to do it. Any other ones?
That's it for now.
So you'll need to build a power team. So that to me includes a mentor, an experienced real estate agent, a CPA, so not H&R Block, and not you relying on yourself to file your personal taxes. I'm talking about an actual accountant, a mortgage broker, a real estate attorney, or an investor-friendly title company, a property management company, lenders, community bankers, whatever software you need. And a lot of these things will come as you go. So like, don't think that I'm giving you a reason to not get started because you don't have all these things in place, but just know that when you're going to be at your best, you'll have all these contacts and all these tools to help you move forward. Later in your journey, you'll need cash buyers, depending on, you know, what your purpose is and what you're doing. You'll need contractors, and you'll need a trustworthy insurance agent or broker. Okay, so I'll get a little bit into my journey. So in 2017 is when I purchased my 2-bed, 2-bath condo while I was in law school. 2018, I started renting out the extra room in my condo, but actually I missed something. So I actually started Airbnb-ing it. I started renting out a room in my condo on Airbnb. And then I started renting it to a long-term tenant. In 2020, I refinanced the condo for a lower interest rate, because I wanted less monthly expenses. And also, interest rates were super low. So I was like, why not? At the same time, I inherited a 4-bed, 2-bath house that did not have a mortgage. In 2021, I got a HELOC on that condo, which is a home equity line of credit. I took the $20,000 in cash that I got from that home equity line of credit And then I started renting out the rooms in the house I inherited. And then I enrolled in an investing course. It was like $1,000. So mind you, at this point, I have $20,000 saved, 19,000, something like that, ready to invest in real estate because I refinanced my initial purchase, which was a condo. In 2022, in January, I used that 20,000 from that home equity line of credit to buy a townhouse in North Carolina, 2 bed, 2.5 bath. Later that year, I bought a 2 unit building in Illinois through a business entity. So in all of 2021 and 2020, we were in a pandemic and I was pretty intimate with my finances. I wasn't really spending anything. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to save as much of my paycheck as I can. So I had a big chunk of money, which is what I used to buy that Illinois building. July, I bought a 3 bed, 2 bath in North Carolina. 2023, September, I bought a 3 bed, 2 bath in Texas. In November, that's when I invested in more education. And I was like, I need to learn about tax liens and deeds so that I can buy properties on the low and stop buying retail. In December of that same year, I bought my first cash purchase, a 2 unit building in Ohio. 2024, so it's very recent. So I just bought a 3 bed, 2.5 bath house in California. Last week, I also bought a house that I'm gonna flip, and that one is a 4 bed, 2 bath in Ohio. And then in March, the plan is to move into the new house in California and rent out the other room in the California condo. Any questions about that?
Yeah. One specifically about the Airbnb part. Well, just about your experience, pros and cons, and would you ever revisit that?
Yeah. So I've mostly had positive experiences with Airbnb. I haven't had any crazy stories like the ones that I've heard, but I have had some. Not all of my Airbnbs have been super profitable. So like my North Carolina one, I would say has been the least profitable. And I think part of it is because so it's a military town and people got wind of it. I don't know. Like all of a sudden, all these Airbnbs started popping up where there were none. And so I kept having to lower my nightly rate so that I can make bookings. And so when I'm lowering my nightly rate, going down to like, 70 per night, sometimes 60 something per night, I'm not, my margins are changing. And so I recently decided that I'm going to switch that Airbnb to a long-term rental with a Section 8 tenant, just to kind of like stop the bleeding. And I mean, it's not bleeding, but it's just not doing what I wanted to do. It's not fitting my purpose. If the purpose is cash flow and this is not flowing, it's more like a dried out stream, then I need to change the strategy. So other than that, my experience with Airbnb has been great. So I've done Airbnb renting out rooms in a house where I live in. I've also rented out multiple rooms in a house I don't live in, and I've also rented out entire houses on Airbnb, and it's been great. I've made friends on Airbnb, people that still keep in contact with me. Airbnb's customer service for hosts, especially if you're a super host, is amazing, way better than Vrbo, in my opinion. They try their best to like actually help you resolve problems, and their fees are less. So I think it's been great. But I do know some people who've had the craziest experiences. So
Yeah.
depends.
Kind of related to how you said that one Carolina properties turned out for you. Someone asked, based on current market rates, is it proving to be economically sustainable to buy and rent long term?
In North Carolina.
Or just in general?
So I think it just again depends on what your goal is. So I am not looking at North Carolina right now, even though my realtor continues to send me properties that are off market and on market, because with interest rates, if I'm getting a loan for the property, the numbers just aren't making sense. So, for instance, when I bought my townhouse in North Carolina, I think my interest rate was like 3%. So the purchase price was $132,500 for a 2 bed, 2.5 bath. The HOA fee was $130 a month. and I was renting it for $1,100 a month. And that was like the top of the market at the time. Now, if I had bought that same property with a 7% interest rate, it just wouldn't make a ton of sense for me. I mean, maybe I would get 100 a month out of it, but is that worth giving up $20,000 of my cash? No. So, but in some markets, like in some places in Ohio, you can get a duplex for $40,000. I mean, it might be worth it. It might make sense even with the interest rates. So it just depends.
Someone asked about what advice do you have for educating our youth today? I guess about this topic, but I guess like maybe a better question is like how you started learning, or I know now a lot of people get information from social media, and that's kind of their first introduction to some of these topics. So kind of what would be your advice in that realm of just learning more?
Yeah, that's actually hard. Like when I was considering buying a real estate course, there were so many people saying that they were real estate gurus. I mean, this was during the pandemic, so everyone was on social media claiming that they were a real estate guru and they were rich and all this stuff. And I just didn't know who to buy the course from. I was like, well, this person has a course and they say they're a millionaire, and this person, their course is 4,000 more. Like so, because it costs more, is it going to get me more money? Like it's very confusing. The reason that I bought the course that I did is because I heard of this person when I was listening to a podcast about something that was not real estate focused. And I appreciated the value that they added to my life in that podcast that had nothing to do with real estate. And so, on a psychological level, I started to kind of like trust these people that I never met, right? They weren't really trying to sell me anything, but I was just like, if I am going to take a course, I'm going to take it from this guy, like I listened to their entire 300 episodes of their podcast. Like, I feel like I kind of know something about them. I understand their story. It resonates with me. Like I trust this person enough to spend $1,000. And worst case scenario, like I lost $1,000. So in terms of like choosing, I would really think about why you're choosing this person's course over this person's course, and maybe use some of their free stuff and see if it adds value to you before you decide to make a purchase. As far as educating the youth, I would say I was at the tax deed auction today in Houston, and there was a man there with his son, 15 years old. Mind you, this is a Tuesday morning. His 15-year-old son was there, his laptop set up. He had an entire spreadsheet. He had the different precincts on different sheets on the Excel sheet. And then on each one, he had the property address, the starting bid amount, the the amount owed and back taxes. Like it was so organized. And so what they had done is the dad would do the bidding because you have to be of a certain age to do the bidding. And if they won the property, the son would update the spreadsheet with whatever he was doing. And then he also had an iPad, and like it was just whole operation. And I was just like, wow. And so my friend asked him like, how long have you been doing this? He was like, since I was like 7. And she was
Oh,
like,
no.
how? Like, he was like, my dad, like, he taught me everything. We come here every month. And I was like, okay. So his dad started investing in real estate, learned everything he needed to know, and then literally raised his children in this business. So this boy is missing school one day a month to come to this auction and support his family legacy and family business. And I think that is the best way. I don't think enrolling our kids in a course, I don't think that's going to do it. I think they have to see us doing it and be taught by us how to do it. So that's my answer.
Not to that parent. Someone asked, let's see, what advice can you give to help single parents purchase a house versus rent and educate their children and family as a whole?
I think it would be similar to anyone else I would give advice to. You need to understand why you want to invest and get intimate with your finances. I'm not sure what particular challenges come with being a single parent. I imagine maybe financial, maybe time management. I'm not sure. But I think the fundamentals will still persist. You need to understand why you're doing it. What are you trying to achieve? That'll help you decide how you're going to achieve it. Make sure your money is in order. If you don't have enough money, figure out how to get more money, and then you'll be able to get started. I think honestly that is like the foundation of getting started.
Another question about your experience with out-of-state flips. I know you said you're going to cover some years later if that's something
Yeah.
that
So
you covered then.
yeah, I haven't done a flip yet. I just
Mm.
bought last week a house in Ohio that I will flip. But I can tell you about properties that I've done a rehab on. I'm actually about to tell you about one right now. Okay, so, and some of this we actually already touched on. So, being saturated with information, that was a big challenge for me. Lack of access to enough capital, that's also been a challenge for me, just wanting to go faster. But, just my solution to that is you're going as fast as you need to go for where you are right now. And everyone's on their own journey. Be patient with yourself. And if you just really don't have the money, my real solution is to just get more money. Like, and I know that sounds so simple, but sometimes that's the answer. Um, so successes. I've been successful renting out individual rooms. House hacking has really worked for me. So not living alone, but renting out a room in the house that I live in, so that basically I'm not paying my mortgage, someone else is paying it. Going to conferences and meeting people and being a continuous learner, and then staying rooted and focused on my purpose, because there's a lot of noise, right? You like with the holding company thing. I've heard the same thing and I'm just like, does that fit with my purpose? Does that even make sense? And so I redirect myself constantly to my purpose. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Does this work with what I'm doing? Will this move the needle forward, or is this just causing confusion? And if it's causing confusion, I just eliminate it. And that's just what it is for me. So this is a house that I purchased in Texas. You can see it's a single family home, and this was purchased last year. This is also part of my like retire my parent plan, so it fits within the purpose. Um, and the strategy is to just hold it, buy and hold, build some equity, rent out a room if necessary, to make it easier, like to, cover utilities or whatever, and then eventually use it as it's intended to be used, for my mom to live in it. This one is a 2-unit building that I bought in Illinois. This was actually my most challenging project. So this was my first rehab. This, I could not find the before pictures, but I have videos. This building, the inside was just framing. Like, we took everything out. And so what you're seeing now is what it looked like after, but before there was like just wood inside the building. The strategy was buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. It currently has 2 Section 8 tenants. But I made some mistakes on this property. So I, embarrassed to say, I'm an attorney, and I did not require the contractor to sign a contract. Why? Because there was a lot of noise, honestly, about how to invest and what to do and how things work. And I ignored my own principles. Like, come on, I'm a lawyer. I should know better. Why would I not have a contractor sign a contract? It makes no sense. 2, I did not ask for a performance bond, and I did not purchase my own. Admittedly, I did not know what a performance bond was at the time. I didn't know that that was a thing, but now I know. It's basically something that you purchase that will guarantee that if the contractor will do the work, or if they don't do the work and try to walk off the job, you can get compensated for that. Mistake number 3, I did not require my contractor to give me a certificate of insurance in my company's name. So pretty much all these things came back to bite me. We don't have the time to get into details, but these are mistakes that I made. It cost me a lot of money making these mistakes, like $50,000 worth of money, that I'm still paying for today. So if you want to avoid some of these mistakes, we could talk about that later. But yeah, it's fine now. The tenants are good and it's going well, but the cash flow is negative technically because of all the additional money and expenses I incurred with making these mistakes as a new investor. I'm guessing.
A lot of questions. Yeah, some of them are related to kind of your examples that you gave and just sharing these stories. But we have a question about some of the locations you would recommend economically buying with the current market.
So it would be helpful if there was a little more context, like buying for what purpose, like buying to rent out, buying to flip, buying to live in, like what is the context, I would say the market I'm really focused on right now is Ohio. Um, I love Cleveland and just Cuyahoga County in general. The properties there are well within my budget. Sometimes I don't even need a loan to buy them. Um, and their rent is high. So like there's it's a big renter city. There's
Mhm.
not a ton of people who own property, so they're renting and it's good rent amounts. And the
And
Section 8 rents are really good there.
and the person clarified, buying to rent.
Buying to rent, yeah. So I would
Okay.
say if you have a low budget, I like Ohio for getting rental income. If you have a big budget, I would say like Illinois. They have high rent in Illinois, but their property prices are a little bit higher. You can get really good long-term rental income in some parts of Florida. I mean, honestly, like most places. Some places I would not buy personally. Like I wouldn't buy in New Jersey because their property taxes are crazy, like out of this world, and there's not even anything in New Jersey, in my opinion. So I personally wouldn't buy there. But I think you can get good rental income with a high budget in, Seattle, definitely New York, San Francisco, low budget, Ohio, Indiana, Missouri, Kansas. Yeah.
And one more kind of related to your example you just gave. Two questions kind of similar about how did you manage developing a rehab all over the country, or how often you had to be on site for the rehab being out of state?
Yeah, so I bought the property without ever having seen it. And I started the rehab without ever having seen it. I do not regret that. I think if you have a strong power team, it can actually work. The weak point in my team in Illinois was the contractor, and also just my lack of best practices. Like it probably would have been fine if I had, had a contract and insurance from his company and all these things. But I had a really great project manager, really great real estate agent. And then my second contractor after the first one walked off the job, he was also really great. So if you have a good team, honestly, you could do anything. In Ohio right now, the person that I'm going to use for the flip, the contractor, also happens to be a property manager. He is like a one or two man show. So he's one of those people who has, multiple licenses. He's like HVAC, electrical, plumbing, also general contractor. So he has cut his overhead costs, which means that my costs have been cut when it comes to doing the rehab. Yes, it may take a little longer, but it doesn't matter if I bought the property in cash, like I'm not paying off a loan or anything. So I have the time for him to get the work done for a cheaper price. So that kind of situation, I mean, I have the people on the ground. I have someone who's going to take pictures and videos for me when I need them, when I need updates. Just picking and building relationships with people who you can rely on to help you get the project done. You could do a project in any state. You could do a project out the country. So,
Gotcha. There's a ton of questions. We're getting closer to the time, and I know you're almost done with your presentation, and I know you have a little bit more about resources that might answer some of these questions that are in the chat. So if you want to just go ahead and finish out, and we can keep asking the questions afterwards for as much time as you have, I guess, to stay on.
okay, that's fine. So, strategies for success and common pitfalls. My advice in terms of long-term strategies are to diversify your investments. So when we first started talking and I said, these are the things that I've tried, um, I like to try a lot of different things. I don't like to keep all my eggs in one metaphorical basket, but that's also in terms of like which states I invest in. I know people who, they only invest in one city and that's fine and that works for them and their risk tolerance. It doesn't work for me. I like things to be spread out. Like if all my investments were in Southern California, I might be having flooding issues right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, or if all my investments were in Florida, I might have hurricane issues for all my properties all at the same time. Like that does not excite me. That makes me really nervous. So I like to diversify in terms of strategy, in terms of location, in terms of how I invest. So that's investing in my personal name versus my company, but that's just my personal preference. Stay anchored to your purpose. So My purpose is what helps me decide what is a good investment and what is not, what is something that I should look into and what is not. It helps me stay focused and on track, and it helps me block out all the noise, and there's going to be a lot of noise. Continuous learning, growing, and mentoring. So being willing to invest in your own education. People are hesitant to spend $500 to learn about something they're interested in doing. It's, I think, a mindset that needs to change if you want to get into this business, because you're going to need to invest in developing yourself and getting better at what you're doing so you won't lose money. Buying low. Never buy retail when investing. This is something I recently learned, literally like 4 months ago, when I invested in new education. So these people were like, you've been buying retail, that's great, it got you this far, but it's not sustainable. You know, how many more loans do you think you can get? A lender will only give you 10 loans, actually. I learned a conventional loan company, they'll only give you 10 mortgages. And after that, they're just like, you got to do it on your own. So it's not sustainable. So they're saying, you know, if you buy a property low, you might be able to get it cash and you don't have to worry about always trying to find a lender, but also you're not overpaying. And then not knowing your numbers. So this is what messes a lot of people up, you know, coming in with numbers that are hopeful because you want the deal to work. You want to get in there, you want to do something. But we should always be conservative with our numbers, because typically something goes wrong, and typically the rehab is more than you thought it was going to be, and you opened up the walls and you didn't think it was going to be nothing behind there, but turns out there was a family of squirrels living in your walls and you just didn't know. I mean, it's just the most random things that can happen. So being super conservative with your numbers helps mitigate the risk. Common pitfalls and how to avoid them. So the number one pitfall I see is people just being too in their feelings about everything. Like I hear people say like, I don't like that house. Like, it's ugly. Like, okay, you're not living there. You're not the one that's renting it. So who cares what you think about what it looks like? The point is, it's going to rent for this amount and the numbers work, and that's it. You know, it's not about you and how you feel about it. It's not your personal house. Another mistake is listening to people with no experience in what you're doing. There's a lot of people who have a lot to say. They like to hear themselves talk about things they don't even know about. And so I've met a lot of people who listen to those people, and I would just caution you. If you are interested in investing in real estate, you should talk to people who invest in real estate, not your friend who heard that her aunt did this and lost this. And like, no, talk to the people who've done it. Number three, underestimating because you want it to work. So we kind of talked about that with the numbers. Like, be conservative with your numbers, be skeptical, you know, assume that things are going to cost more than they will, and assume that, you know, you're going to get less than you will. And if those numbers still work, then it's probably something good. Sitting on the sidelines because you're paralyzed from over analyzing. This is probably what I see the most. People who have the money, they have the time, they have the intelligence, but they're overthinking it, and they end up just doing nothing and just watching and congratulating you and being happy for you, but never doing anything. And then again, be conservative with your numbers, because that's what it's all about, right? Like we're not investing in real estate to have negative cash flow every month. That's not the goal. Well, sometimes you want negative cash flow, but it's another story for another day. But overall, you know, we want to build some sort of wealth or legacy or extra income from this. Key takeaways: prioritize your financial education and become intimate with your finances. Number two, find an investment mentor. A quote that I heard is, amateurs might not have coaches, but professionals do. Turns out it's super true. Build your power team. So that allows you to begin to own your time. So you don't have to know everything. You have to leverage other people on your team to give you information in their expertise. Create a plan of action. And sometimes figuring it out as you go is something that you're doing, but that doesn't mean it was a good plan. You can make a plan even if you don't end up following the plan, or you can plan to fail, as they always say. The rest of these slides are just resources that I recommend. So these are books that I read and loved. So the first one is How to Invest in Real Estate. That's actually the first book I read before I even bought a course, and it was super helpful. The second one is the book on estimating rehab costs. It's not a book that you read front to cover. It's a book that you use when you're thinking about making repairs and you want to know if this person is charging you a reasonable amount. And then the third one is We Should All Be Millionaires, which is probably one of my favorite books. It's a book that can help you get out of what she calls the broke ass mindset, and help you start thinking in terms of abundance instead of scarcity. Further learning, so podcasts, sorry for the typo, the Secret to Success podcast is the one that I was referring to when I said I learned about this real estate investor on a podcast that had nothing to do with real estate. Really good podcast. If you're interested, I will listen to it from the first episode to current, because then you get to follow the stories in their lives. Black Real Estate Dialogue is really good. Aid to Assets is really good. That one's specifically for people who are 9-to-5ers who want to invest in real estate. Investor's Playbook is really good when you want to get intimate with your finances. Melanin Money Show is just good for overall business mindedness. Earn Your Leisure is really good also for just hearing other people's stories and learning how to get in that business mindset. And then Instagram accounts I would follow, of course, G-Show Inspections, super educational. 9-to-5 Millionaire, that is that person whose course I bought, Jamal King. And then Andre Yes to Real Estate. Andre is a developer here in Texas, and he has tons of educational content and programs. He also has live events here in Houston where he teaches you about real estate. And everyone.